Finding the right bank can be transformative for your small business. The best bank for your business will offer competitive fees and so much more. At BNC National Bank, our team is proud to offer you a helpful, supportive, above and beyond banking relationship. Starting to stress about the complexities of qualifying for a small business loan? BNC can guide you through the process with much less stress and likely far more success. Speak to one of our team members today.
The right way to top a sub is with real red wine vinegar made from red grapes and no food coloring. And the right way to film it is in slow motion. Obviously. Because authentic ingredients make a sub above.
It's water. Boom. Agent Winston Otter. He's been called the human sponge.
Our stylists are trained to understand the nuances of cutting men's hair. Less pomp, more adore, huh, Brittany?
Square face, wavy hair.
Mid-fade with a textured top. Finish it off with a hard part and taper that neckline, coach.
Cowlick, what's the move? It's not just all about hard work here.
Hit all. 7. Pressure. Points. Yeah.
It takes expertise to be a sport clip stylist.
Here?
That's the spot. Right there, huh?
Sport Clips, the pros in men's hair.
Eight teams from across the state of North Dakota are still alive for state championship hopes. Tomorrow they play at the Fargo Dome for the Dakota Bowl 2022. Welcome in to the preview show here on the PSP Network, brought to you by Sport Clips of Minot and Bismarck. Welcome in on a windy, chilly, snowy, rainy night here in the beautiful Fargo, North Dakota. We're live from the Expressway Suites here in Fargo. Nick Hulberg, one of the voices of the PSP Network, joined tonight by three of the best in the business that will have the call tomorrow on the PSP Network for digital radio. Starting on the far side with Mr. Scott WOODMANSEE, the former Bismarck Century Patriot. I heard last night you weren't quite a football guy as much as other sports, or maybe you just weren't as good at that. Is that what the case was?
A combination of both.
Just a little bit of everything.
Just cut to the chase. Yeah.
Well, compared to the other two guys up here on the
don't hold a candle to them.
On the panel, of course.
It's like being on the JV team, man.
Well, when you got Chuck CLAIRMONT, who was the captain of the Fighting Sioux of North Dakota back in the day, and former Bismarck High standout, and of course the Langdon Cardinal. Be careful because there's a bunch of Cavalier people in here, so we don't want to get the. Oh yeah, there they are. They're brewing tonight, gentlemen. First things first. What a football season. Are you guys ready for another fun day at the Fargo Dome tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. I think the thing that intrigues me the most is the field, right? Because you got some teams that haven't won it in forever. You got teams that are legendary programs that are looking to go back-to-back. And you got some teams that have waited a long, long time to get to a chance to win a state championship. So that's the piece that intrigues me. And then you got a few Cinderella stories in the field as well that nobody thought we were going to be here.
Well, I think, and not to mention, you got a number 8 seed in this thing. I mean, you talk about Cinderella stories with Century. I mean,
it's hard to call them a Cinderella story when they're ranked second in the beginning of the year.
They're not, but I agree with you, but they are.
From the record, yeah.
Essentially, knowing that they win this thing, they could be the state champs at 500.
Unbelievable.
You've never seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with TD. It's just there's a great mix of the veterans, the news, the rookies, the Cinderellas. So they got a little bit of everything, and each of these games offer that. And not to mention some phenomenal athletes. I think that's the part that we as broadcasters love it, that we get a chance to have a great seat and viewpoint to watch these kids that are just tremendous athletes. So that's the part that we always look forward to. And it's a long day, but it's a fun day.
It's a fun day. Is there any game tomorrow that you guys look forward to more than another game? I mean, we got a pair of teams that are unbeaten on the year going head-to-head. You got Velva back in here, like you guys mentioned, that haven't been here since 2010 after what they did in the early 2000s. We get to see Division I athletes for the future coming up and playing tomorrow. Is there a game, TD, that stands off the paper for you tomorrow that you're looking forward to the most?
I mean, I think every one of them sets up to be a really good matchup. I don't look at any of these and say, wow, shoot, somebody's going to win by 3 touchdowns or something like that. So I think if you were setting lines on all these, they'd be all within probably 4 or 5 points of each other. So I think they're all going to be good games. I think that 9B game jumps off the page for me. I mean, you got 2 undefeated teams, 2 teams looking to get over the hump, so to speak. Cavaliers been the bridesmaid for a couple of years now, but just a legendary football town and football program. So Cavalier trying to get back on top. And hey, we got a chance to follow New Salem for a few weeks now, and they got that cattle trailer all dusted up, ready to go. So the Holsteins will be there and ready to go tomorrow.
Not in the cattle trailer, but I would agree with Todd again. I don't know. I can just say ditto, because that 9B, clearly we followed them closely with the New Salem team. That it's a rematch, that semifinal game of last year that went into overtime, and a lot of the same faces back from last year. To me, that seems to set up as I would say as the most closely contested. I mean, that would be surely a field goal or less if you're going to put odds on that game, and the other ones, not to say they're not going to be good games, but that one, and then obviously the Century Shanley one. Who knows? With the Patriots stepping in there and getting a chance to get after starting 0-5 and getting a chance to get to the state championship, and Shanley, being a powerhouse and for how many years, but now they're kind of moving up when they didn't have to, moved up on their own. So I would say those 2 games. And the other ones, hey, they're going to be great too, but those are the 2 games that I'm looking for.
On that note, I have to ask you guys have been doing this for so many years. You grew up playing in high school football in North Dakota. You went on to college to have a great career there at UND. You went on to play college basketball. What are your time in sports? But high school football, very near and dear to everybody on this panel here tonight. Are you guys satisfied? And we don't need to get too deep into this conversation, but the changes that the NDHSA made from last year to this year, implementing the QRF and some of the different changes we saw. We had a long conversation last year during our preview show that something had to change after seeing Fargo Davies just mop the house on the west side of the state to not even make the playoffs. Woody, were you satisfied with the changes that we saw?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't think there's really going to be any right solution to this whole process. And I think it's, a lot of it comes down to, obviously, there's the scenario with St. Mary's and how St. Mary's got bumped up to where they are based on the performance rule. And I think you're going to see a lot of that. As a matter of fact, I think Cavalier is one of those teams right now that's based in that, where they're going to end up having to go 11-man next year. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's working, and I guess it's probably too early to tell, but we'll see what happens, and as we move forward with this whole thing.
Well, really, you're only looking at a couple, because the lower divisions aren't using the QRF, but I would say it worked in the AA. Because also what they did is they made a little bit of a tweak that wasn't in there when they said, hey, if you played a team and beat them and they're ranked above you, that now you get the home field advantage. And I thought those were good changes that they made potentially on the go. I mean, it seemed like it was a last-minute change, but I think it was the right change, and they got the right teams in it, and I think the seedings, when they utilized the QRF, I thought they were appropriate.
I think as far as getting the right teams into the playoffs, I think the QRF did exactly what it should have done, right? You didn't have that situation where you had a team that was 2-7 or something like that getting into the playoffs, and there's a better team out there in the state. I think it fixed that part. I don't like the quality success formula thing and teams moving up, and I'm not a fan of that. That works in softball when you're a Class F team and you get to move up to a Class D team, but I don't like it in high school football, and I'm just not going to be a fan of that.
Well, I was just going to say, TD, this isn't the platform. Yeah, go ahead and cheer if you'd like to. TD all over it here tonight. Here's my thing. I was going to bring this up, but I don't even know if we should. The 3-class system now is not the time. I was going to tell you.
Yeah, we don't get enough time to talk about that, please.
This is an hour show, right?
we can't do it because we got to dive into the 11B matchup, the first one that we'll have tomorrow live from the Fargo Dome. The Velva Aggies are back in the Dakota Bowl. Larry Sandy, 33 years as a head coach in North Dakota for high school football, and this is a guy that is on the Mount Rushmore for coaches in North Dakota high school football, and it's his last. He's going to retire after this year. He goes against Central Cass tomorrow in a matchup, and a big one with the Squirrels and the Aggies. Gentlemen, let's break this one down. First of all, Chuck Claremont, myself will have the call of this tomorrow, bright and early tomorrow morning. Chuck, first thing for you, you played a high level of football. How much of a factor is the 9 a.m. kickoff tomorrow for these young student athletes?
Well, we don't have an hour to discuss that.
We got to talk about that. There's another discussion we don't need to start right now either.
Because that's the first one that I know on this table we agree that it's not the right thing to do. To put a group of kids that have been playing afternoons and evenings all year, then to say you got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and prepare for a game, I don't think it's appropriate, but it's not going to change right now. There's too many other factors outside of it, whether it's NDHAA paying money to the Dakota Bowl, whether it's WDAY or whoever's going to be the broadcasting. There's just too many revenue interests and financial interests that are pulling away from it. And so I think in a perfect world, to me, they're 2 evening games. You play 2 Fridays, you play 2 Saturday, and you get a chance to showcase these teams in a time frame when people can come watch them and when people are going to be watching them on TV. But ultimately, doesn't matter. These guys are happy to be here, right? And at this point, it's like, hey, if I got to play at 9 o'clock, and that means that I'm the last 2 teams in A or in 11B to play, then okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ideal scenario is if you could play the AA game on Thursday night and then have 3 of them on Friday. Both teams get the same amount of rest because those teams are playing on Friday. The week before, the 11B and the 9B are playing on Saturday. So I think that makes a heck of a lot of sense. That 9 a.m. start, you can't tell me that it's good for and it's the best for the kids when you're 11-0 and maybe facing another team that's 11-0, and you're going to highlight this game, and you're telling kids you have to get up at 4 a.m. for a pregame meal. I mean, come on. That is not the best thing for the kids, the fans, the schools, and everybody involved. So we all agree on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every year we talk about this, and we talk about it until we're blue in the face and nothing's going to happen. But, it's something where I think it's a week now where, as a coach, and I'd be curious to see what Larry Sandy or what Tommy Butler did as far as the practice during the week of practice. I mean, was he getting these kids up at that time, and were they doing this, and how they were preparing for doing it? I think every time whoever plays this game, and I think the other argument will be is, why is it always the 9-man and the 11B? Why doesn't the 11-2A get to have to play that game? Why doesn't the 11A play that game? And again, we can go on and on and on about that, but I think just the preparation in the week leading up to this, it'll be interesting to see how talking to these 2 coaches tomorrow, what they did leading up to this 9-10 kickoff tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You look at how these teams got here, gentlemen. And it was a Central Cass team that ended up going through a pretty darn good Botno team and having an upset there. Then they had the big upset probably of the playoffs where they took down number 1 Kindred, the defending state champions. They get themselves into the semifinals where they have to go through a tough Beulah Miners football team again. And they're a team that's obviously battle-tested coming into this. They've got a high-powered offense, but they go against a high-powered offense and a tough defense in Velva, who had the same thing. They were ranked number 2 pretty much all season. They went through Bowman County without any trouble. Then they had Dickinson Trinity on their home field again. They get the win there. And then last week they shut down the Burros from Hillsborough Central Valley. Chuck, in your mind, does either one of these teams have an edge in this showdown coming up tomorrow morning?
Well, I think the Aggies have an edge just ultimately from ranked number 2 all season, and I would say they're favored. If you take a look at their team, and I mean, they're loaded with a bunch of seniors. They got so many strengths, offensive, defensive lines. They got great threats on offense. They're defensively, they're one of the best defenses that are out here. We're only giving up 11 points a game, and we know defense wins championships. And you go back to the old Velva days, that's what they did. They played hard-nosed defense and got in your face. And I know Central Cass matches up fairly well because they're big as well. So from an offensive and defensive line, those are some of the key matchups. But if I'm looking at a team that's maybe has a little bit of an advantage, it might be the Velva Aggies, although I think that in terms of the best player in the field is Woodsma. I think he's the kid that, he could make a difference just alone in terms of what he's done in the last couple of years, and surely this year as, almost 1,200 yards and 21 touchdowns. So he's a guy a difference maker on the Central Cass team that he could carry the team by himself.
I'm excited for you to get a look at Ben Shep tomorrow, the sophomore quarterback from Velva. He can air the ball out. He can run the ball as well. This is a matchup that should be fun. Central Cass 9-2 coming out of Region Number 1. Velva, Drake, Animus, Garrison 12-0 on the season out of Region Number 3. And before we move on to the next matchup, I have to tell you guys something that covering Velva for the most part this year, living in Minot, I was pretty excited for the opportunity to get to call the game with Chuck. And never called the game at the Dakota Bowl before. And I have to tell you, Woody and TD, I don't know that I hold a candle to your guys' play-by-play call for high school football. When I found out this game was at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm still kind of upset that you guys deferred, and I'm the one that's got to be in the booth tomorrow morning.
That was an easy call. It's like, hey, you go ahead and take that one.
You got that one.
The one other thing you talk about, like with Velva, and you think about the co-op, and with Garrison and Drake Animus. Drake Animus was playing six-man football, and then they had some, then they got the co-op, and due to the emergency co-op, there's a couple kids that did not get to play this year. And I think everybody will know what that name is, the last name of Olson. So there's a couple more of those kids coming. And then you look at Garrison, and, talking with the folks in Garrison, it was a few years ago when, he sent over 5 players to over to Velva, and now one of their star players, Eigelhart, the sophomore. So certainly an interesting story when you talk about what Larry Sandy has done, what he did in the early 2000s and the run he went on with Velva. And I think certainly kudos to him and what he's done, and it's going to be an intriguing matchup tomorrow.
Guys, one of the favorite coaches around for me is Tommy Butler. I mean, the enthusiasm and the charisma that kid brings. I call him a kid, right? He's a young guy, but, man, his team is hot right now.
Yep.
And you guys know how that rolls, right? Century's hot right now. Central Cass might be just as hot. And that can go and drive big things. I think back to my favorite team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2006, the 6th seed, and they rode it all the way to a Super Bowl when they defeated Seattle in Super Bowl 40. So it doesn't take much to get these teams rolling. But, man, I look at Velva, VDAG. Can we just go with that as the shortened up version of that?
I think we're going with Velva, aren't we?
Is it VDAG?
I don't know.
VDAG? Is that what you do?
I think we recognize them in the beginning of the game and say, hey, thanks, guys. But
it's a mouthful, isn't it?
I mean, you think that team's going to go – I mean, they're always hard-nosed and blue-collared as far as I'm concerned, Velva, that they just play tough and they're fundamentally sound. They are going to line up and not beat themselves. And you think they're going to toe it up tomorrow for their head coach in his final game? Velva's going to come to play tomorrow, folks.
Well, and the other thing, Todd, and I guess get your thoughts. I had a chance to talk with Chuck earlier about this, and you talked about Tommy Butler, okay, in where he's at in his 4th year. You look at Larry Sandy in his 33rd year. Larry Sandy, been there, done that, and he's been in this line. He's been in the spotlight. He's won the championships. How big in your mind do you think that coaching could come down to who wins his game? And now, take nothing away from Tommy Butler, but certainly, obviously, 33 years of doing this and been there, done that, it'll certainly be interesting to watch tomorrow.
Well, I would imagine Central Cass, the coach, he might bring the kids out like back in the old basketball game when saying, hey, we've never played in the Dakota Bowl. We've never played in the Dome. There's 100 yards. I don't care where we play. It's 100 yards. It's the same thing. We got goalposts. That's it. Don't worry about it, guys. Just play the game.
You went Hoosiers on us.
That's absolutely right there. That's the Hoosier line.
Butler Fieldhouse.
That's exactly what it is.
Hey,
Measuring it 10 foot is the rim, right?
Is this the same height?
In this case, it's a 100-yard field, and let's go out and play like we have. And, 3 games on the road. I would say they're a little bit of a Cinderella from that perspective. But like you said, Todd, beat 1, they beat 5, and then, the semifinals, they were receiving votes.
Yep, they were in the poll.
And so pretty amazing in terms of the confidence this Central Cass Squirrel team has, obviously going in this game.
Yeah, it should be fun. We're going to be on the air tomorrow roughly 8:50 tomorrow morning for a Shields pregame show tomorrow, live from the Fargo Dome. Chuck and I will have the call of that one on the PSP Network. By the way, you can listen to every single game from the Dakota Bowl. We've got the scoring system hooked up as well, so you can stop in at any time onto the PSP.network website to see what the score of the game is and what game we're in as well. So a nice added feature for this year of the Dakota Bowl as well. All right, time for game number 2, and it's a 9-man matchup, and one that I would expect that there's some people watching live right now inside of this Expressway Suites little gathering area here. Is there any Cavalier fans here tonight?
That was a loaded question.
Hey, this is a common thread apparently when we come to the last couple of years when we come to Fargo, huh?
You got to love it, and that's the part about it that I like so much. It's Cavalier and New Salem. This one for me is one that on paper and what we can expect in this ball game tomorrow, 11-0 Cavalier out of region number 3, 11-0 New Salem Almont out of region number 5. This is a rematch of last year's semifinals and a game that you guys had the call of last year. Cavalier had the upper hand. They fell short in the Dakota Bowl last year. Gentlemen, what do you remember most about the matchup between these two teams last year? Obviously, they're different teams this year, but a rivalry that has kind of been brewing here in 9-man football.
Just the back and forth action. I mean, we did that game last year. It was exciting. It was a beautiful day in New Salem too, and we knew it was going to come down to the last possession potentially, and it surely did. And hey, there's still conversations that did he really get over the goal line? I know that the Cavalier fans are saying, of course he did. Hey, there he is.
He
awesome.
actually is, yes.
Of course he did, right? And so, I mean, that was one of the best games that I've ever got a chance to be around. I mean, just great action. The kids laid it all on the line, and you know that's a typical agony of, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. When you walk out on the field afterwards, when we got a chance to interview some of the Cavalier kids, and you saw the fields flooded with fans, it's flooded with players. There was crying, there was smiles, and it was just one of those pieces that it was just a great setting. Obviously better for Cavalier than it was a setting for New Salem, but they're surely looking forward. I think New Salem is for the rematch.
Yeah, instant classic for me.
Yeah.
I mean, a game that goes into overtime and you have it settled by a late 2-point conversion. I mean, settle it on the field, and those two teams did a year ago. And you just got to tip your cap to Cavalier for going on the road. And, the Tornadoes kind of had a little chip on their shoulder last year.
Big time.
The fact that they even had to go on the road, right? And the way the rankings settled out. And I think that has maybe carried over a little this year. The fact that Cavalier had to get on the road and go to LLM in the semifinal game. I'm sure there's some folks in the Cavalier camp that say, why wouldn't we be at home? What do we got to do to get a home game in these playoffs the last couple of years?
Yeah, why'd the coaches pick us third, not second?
yeah. But sometimes that chip on the shoulder can create W's too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I agree with you guys too. I think when you look at all 4 of these games, I think just having been a part of that game, last year, that semifinal game, and Todd, you nailed it right on the head. It was an instant classic, and I don't expect anything less tomorrow. I think that, some people may say that probably, New Salem may have been a little bit better last year in some areas. But then, Cavalier, they had to make some changes and put some kids in different spots, and they've done that. And certainly, you look at teams that are putting up 40 points a game, and then defensively they're giving up, 9-10 points each team, and it's kind of like, okay, what's going to happen? And I don't think this thing's going to be 7-6.
I don't think so.
Or 10-8 or anything like that.
Take the over.
Yeah, you take the over on this one. But it's just you've got 2 offenses that can score. You got 2 defenses that can stop each other. What's going to happen? And I think that's really going to come down to who's going to bend and who's going to break.
Tomorrow should be a fun one, and we expect a lot of scoring opportunities in this ball game. Cavaliers been here. They've been close so many times, and they just haven't been able to shake that monkey. New Salem gets here, and they look for the same thing. Are there players in this game tomorrow that you guys would highlight that you look forward to seeing in tomorrow's showdown?
Yeah, Landon Carter jumps off the page for me. I mean, kid that's been in that Tornado lineup for multiple years now. He may be one of the best athletes you'll see on the Gate City Bank field tomorrow for the whole state to see, and they've been seeing him for multiple years now, and he's the dual threat, right? He's the Swiss Army knife. They put him in the backfield. They split him out. man, wherever 11 goes, that's where New Salem's got to have some attention because it seems like he does a lot for that Cavalier team. And, this is an interesting matchup, right, guys? Because you look at New Salem, and they have size on everybody, right? They are so big up front, but I think back to that matchup last year, and they were had a size advantage over Cavalier, but man, those Cavalier kids bring it. And the scheme that they play, they're undersized, but man, they attack and they are physical in the way that they play football. So the game has a lot of chances to be won in the trenches. If New Salem's going to win, it's going to be in the trenches.
Is there any concern for speed for New Salem tomorrow as their X and O's draw up tomorrow for this one?
Well, I would say that that's one of its size versus speed, but clearly New Salem, they've got some athletes that they showed last week. We got a chance to watch some of these kids in terms of speed, Meyer and Norton, and they can they can bring it. They can get out and move. And Wyatt Kuhn, I was surprised at how quick he was running that 79-yard. He's at 6'4", he's gangly, but
huh?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So I would say that, surely the speed is, if you're looking at check marks, it's to the Tornadoes, but I think both sides have such great athletes that they match up so very well. It's that classic size versus speed. And to me, New Salem, they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to take their size and beat it at Cavalier and say, okay, we're going to bring it. We're going to get our big guys up front. We're going to run behind A.J. Hines and Pittman and Becker, and we're going to take it right at you with Norton, who's got almost 1,500 yards and 21 touchdowns, just a sophomore. So you talk about these athletes out here. He's a kid. He's just a sophomore. But I got a feeling that New Salem's going to throw the football a lot more than they have in the past. I mean, it was, I think, about average 5 times TD coming in, 5 or 6 times coming into the semifinal game, and ended up throwing it over 15 times. I think that game, and ultimately, I feel like Wolding's going to put it in the air a little more, because they've got some kids in Kuhn and Norton out of the backfield, and I think Wolding's going to throw it a little more.
Yeah, and I agree, Chuck. I mean, I was going to make that same comment, but I think the one thing that in talking with Coach Kleingen and seeing some things, he doesn't want this thing to be a track meet. I mean, if this thing gets into a track meet, it's gonna go heavy on the Tornado side, and so he's gonna. Oh, there we. So he's gonna do what he can and utilize that size that he's got up front and just ground and pound it. I mean, it's gonna be Wolding right, Wolding left, Norton right, Norton up the middle, Wolding right, and then as you said, Chuck, I think he's gonna. At some stage, we're gonna see him throw it a little bit more and do some different things. But again, I mean, if this thing gets to be a track meet, look out. I mean, the tornado is going to hit the Fargo Dome tomorrow.
I mean, have you guys ever seen a team like Cavalier now, where as successful as they've been, and now 6 different quarterbacks in 6 years? I mean, that's unheard of. And then to continue to have the success that they have had. It's a testament to what Sandy Laxdal was doing. It's a testament to what now Mitch Greenwood is doing in developing these kids, because they're getting some snaps in JV. They're playing other positions that make them learn the QB position. But then to just take that and continue to have the level of play that they've had at the QB position with kids that really only have 1 year on varsity under their belt, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and how about athletes? I mean, it's just having athletes and having kids that are able to do that. Having to make them, come and play quarterback or go back and play tailback or do whatever. I mean, you can't teach athleticism.
I think success breeds success. Yep. And Cavaliers is one of those program traditions, even back when Rod Oxendahl was the coach, when they were winning back in his days. I mean, they started something big time back in those days, and I think the first title was back in 1987, and then they just kind of hit the early 2000s, ran that 3-year run, and Cavaliers got consistently. They got kids out for football. It's a football town, and they've got that tradition. New Salem, they don't necessarily have that tradition. Yes, they've been in the semifinals, but they've got 1 state championship back in 1986 and 2 Dakota Bowl appearances. So experience is a big thing. Cavaliers have been here 3 times. They haven't won. So to me, when you step into that piece, that experience is going to go a long way. Yep. And when you got guys like Jake Steele and Landon Cutter, they've been there 3. This is their 4th time they've been to the state championship. Yep. Now they're 0 for 3. So clearly those 2 kids are going, we want to get off the schneid. Let's put some. And they got the horses to do it, absolutely.
The one thing that Cavalier does that's really going to challenge New Salem, I believe, is they extend plays. And Enerson gets out of the pocket and he scrambles. And these receivers are unbelievable at changing their routes and going deep and breaking things off. And that's going to challenge New Salem's defense absolutely the fact that they kind of run around and play a little playground football sometimes.
Yeah, and I thought one thing too is I thought that New Salem's defensive secondary was better last week than they were the week before.
Yeah.
But you said right, and that's what Cavalier does well, and they're able to make those adjustments on the fly. And it's going to be they're going to really have to rely on those guys in that secondary for the Holsteins.
And they're going to be challenged. You got 5'9" in Tellman, 5'5" in Grinsteiner.
I was going to go there.
I mean, linebacker Myers 5'8", so I mean they got size could be a potential issue when Steele and Carter. I mean they're 5'10", 5'11", but yet in terms of you start talking about leaping ability and whatever else, and so there's definitely a little advantage to me when you take a look at that. And
the best way you combat that is you put pressure on the quarterback.
There you go.
And you somehow keep him in the pockets. That's not easy to do. They ran into a great one last week in Nick Mears for North Prairie, and he escaped the pocket a few times. Yeah. But at the end of the day, New Salem corralled him pretty good and kept him standing in there and throwing the football and trying to make him throw it on time instead of just turning it into a fire drill.
It's going to be a fun one. I have a quick A.J. Hines story for you. I bumped into him in the elevator yesterday, and if you haven't seen this kid play, he's a monster. One of the best interviews that I've seen. You had the pleasure of interviewing him. First of all, how much do you guys like this kid? He's just a special dude, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, off the charts. The leadership and the respect, I think, that he has within that football team, and frankly, for people around the state. I mean, his goal is to be one of those small-town kids that goes and plays D1 football. And how do you not respect that? He wants to do what Cordell Volson did for Drake Animus, and now playing for the Cincinnati Bengals. That's what A.J. Hines wants to do. And I heard something interesting about the guy. I mean, they list him at like 290. I mean, so he's a physical specimen, a two-time wrestling state champion in the heavyweight division. He's up to about 320 right now.
He's catching me.
So he's going to have to cut about 40 pounds to make weight for 285 wrestling. So he's got his work cut out for him, but he's got some extra bulk on right now for the football.
Yeah, I think watching the interview that we did with him, the quarterfinal game, I think it just showed you the leadership that he shows and taking responsibility for some things that he felt happened up front in that game that he was responsible for, and not to mention I hope nobody, I don't know if they allow flags into the Fargo Dome, but if anybody from Cavalier is bringing a flag tomorrow, don't set it down in front of AJ because he doesn't like that. So,
but don't plant it in the middle of the field.
Don't plant it in the middle of the field. But again, it's not his field, so I don't know, maybe. But I'm guessing he'll probably have the same effect.
And we saw throughout the playoffs, as soon as teams have to put more than one person on AJ, and he demands a double team in a lot of cases. He is so big and strong and quick that he can defeat a single block. Tosted, the guy who was getting looks at D1 last week for North Prairie, he could challenge him one-on-one in a lot of cases. And I don't know if Cavaliers got a guy that can do that. And so in nine-man football, as soon as you got to put two people on one guy, you're at a disadvantage. There's just not enough numbers out there to make everything else work.
Hey, you look at the guys up front, and you got Kenna at 175, Rose at 180, and Ederson at 195 at the front of the Cavaliers. So, ooh, boy. And there's nobody weighing over 175 in the rest of the team. So the beef is going to make a difference. So they're going to have to go around them, let's just say.
Well, you got to use your speed.
That's what I mean.
Exactly what you got to do.
And as you talk about this, and you talk about it, obviously when you talk about A.J. Hines, but how big of a role does Levi Becker play? He's 6 foot 235. He's a guy that's been there too. I mean, he's a good football player. Maybe he's a guy that's going to have to step up and be a difference for them tomorrow if AJ is getting what we think, if he's going to get double teamed and defensively he's going to have to. It might be Becker or as you said, the guy who's Wyatt Kuhn too. Yeah, he's not small, 6'4", 190. So
no, they're not a one-man band. I mean, AJ's surely dominant, but they're not a one-man band, which is why this matchup I think is so interesting because there's a lot of good athletes, wrestlers, basketball players, football players. There's a lot of good athletes on both sides of the football, and it's going to be great to fans to get a chance to see them. And it's noon, so we might have most of North Dakota up by then and shoveled out by then maybe.
I'll be up only because TD and Woody didn't want to take that first one tomorrow. To finish that story real quick, I hop in the elevator, and I recognized him from that interview that he did that was just a classic. And I said, are you from New Salem? And he got a look on his face, and he said, I am. And I said, are you A.J. Hines? And he looks at me, and I'm looking up to him, keep in mind, and he's a big dude, and he goes, Depends on who's asking it. I said, Nick Hulberg with PSP Network, and he said, thanks for doing what you do. And he reached out his hand, and I gave him my hand.
Yeah.
He grabbed that thing like this, and all of a sudden I was like, okay, man, just a next time might do the trick, So.
Well, and it goes back to the same question, when you say depends who's asking, it goes back to the question that Todd asked him after the game, whether it's a sack, a takedown,
a pancake block, a pin at the state wrestling meet. Which one gets you more excited?
Depends upon the moment.
He's like, it depends upon the stage. I mean, kids don't answer questions like that very often.
They don't.
Here's all you need to know about A.J. Hines. So we're getting ready to talk to him after their win against Grant County Flasher in the quarters, and he's off saying thanks to Caden Ravinius, the 300-pound lineman for Grant County Flasher, for the good push for the day. So we couldn't even get a chance to interview him. So the next week, I'm getting ready to interview him again, and he's over talking to Tosted for North Prairie, saying thanks for the good push. I mean, and he finally did come back so we can interview him. But I mean, this tells you he's a class act, and he recognizes that, hey, this is a battle, and I'm gonna go toe to toe with you, and at the end of the day, I'm gonna shake hands with you, and we'll be friends.
Yep.
It's going to be a fun one. That one takes place in the second game of the day tomorrow. Game number 3 tomorrow. This is a Jamestown Blue Jays team that enters the Dakota Bowl for the 3rd straight year. They take on the Fargo North Spartans. How long has it been since we've said that the Spartans are in the state championship game? This is a matchup of an East vs. West rival in single-A football. 7-4 for Fargo North, 9-2 for Jamestown. This is going to be an entertaining matchup tomorrow as well, I'd have to assume.
Yeah, it's been since 2000 for Fargo North, and really, they've struggled in the AA ranks, or the top tier. I guess they've changed the ranks. I just call them top tier. And for them, it was a good move. They got a chance to move down now to the second tier ranks, and they've made it to the tournament postseason the last couple of years. And it's a team we saw early against St. Mary's, and we were surprised. I thought St. Mary's was going to roll on that one. We got a AA team playing a single A team, and we felt like there could have been a mismatch, and Fargo North came out and punched St. Mary's right in the mouth. Yep. And it showed me at that point in time that they've got some athletes in Welk and Haugo, and then obviously Jeremiah Sim, the wide receiver. And so it's a Fargo team that their coach keeps telling the kids that you're a team of destiny. And, okay, what does that really mean? At 7-4, they've struggled throughout the year, but I think their coach has said that keeps bringing them back, saying you're here for a reason, and he's really instilled confidence, and that's Coach Adam Rowland, and Coach of the Year last year for the A ranks, and so he's in his 9th year, and he's a guy that's really done great things at Fargo North, and they put him in a position that they're in a position that they're a very quality football team, and they're going to give Jamestown everything they can handle.
Yeah, and I think too you're gonna see probably when you talk about athletes in the Dakota Bowl, you're going to probably see one of the best quarterbacks in the state, in Peyton Hochhalter from Jamestown. I mean, he's got 2,300 yards to throw in the football. We saw what he did last year, and I think Bill Nelson's got nothing but high praise. Kid that signed at Jamestown. But I think there's a team there, too, that, when you talk about an energetic football coach, well, just watch Bill Nelson or talk to Bill Nelson, because he'll tell you. And I sent him a message earlier today, and the only thing he sent back to me was, tomorrow it's going to be a great day. Now, what that means, I don't know. I suppose right now it's going to be a great day if they can get here, number one. And then number 2 is if they can go on and win it. But certainly a matchup of two teams that played before. But again, I think this one here is going to be as good as the other ones as well.
Throughout the course of the season, it was hard to figure out what was going on in that 11A division. I mean, you had Valley City that had moments. You had Red River that had moments. You obviously had both North and Jamestown that had some moments. Wapaton came in and knocked some teams off.
Beat Jamestown.
And beat Jamestown.
You had Fargo South in there.
You had Fargo South in there in the mix. So it was going to be really interesting to see, to me, who was still standing once the dust settled in this bracket. And all of a sudden you got Jamestown shoot. They hadn't won one since 1956, and so they waited 65 years to win one last year. Now they're trying to get greedy. win 2 in a row, right? And so then you got Fargo North, as you said, that they haven't won one since 2000. So very intriguing matchup. I watched a lot of that North and St. Mary's game just like you, and it kind of opened my eyes that, hey, this is a good physical football team that has some talent also in those skill positions, and so they bring a lot of good things to the table. And Jamestown's just fun to watch. I mean, the way they play offense, and that guy that they got kind of stirring the drink at quarterback is as good as they get, and so North's going to have their hands full taking care of the Blue Jays on defense.
Well, one kid, too, that talk about a great athlete from Jamestown, Jackson Walters.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got 13 touchdowns, 865 yards from the tight end spot. He is Shirley Payton Halter's favorite target, but even more importantly for them, he is the guy in the middle on their defensive side. 100 tackles. He was second-team All-State. He will be a first-team All-State, I can tell you for sure, as well as Colton Muse. So they got a couple studs on the defensive side of the football for Jamestown that, they're only giving up 10 points a game. So another team that has had great success from the defensive side. And they got a couple great linebackers in Muse and Walters. And I said this early on, is being able to see these kids, and we watched a lot of them. We've watched a lot of tape on these different kids, but being able to see them in person, it's a different situation. So, again, just exciting to see. Hochhalter, haven't seen him since last year, and the same thing these other kids.
And, the other thing that stands out for me is good for these teams to get a chance to play for a state title. That's what the divisions are all about. Because I'm telling you, on a year-in and year-out basis, North and Jamestown are not going to be able to compete at the AA. Right?
Yep.
I mean, and so this is a great division for them to be in, and for them to have a chance to win a state title, that's what the divisions are all about.
Well, and one thing, too, for Jamestown, when you talk about, the Blue Jays, one significant injury is that they had last week, Preston Gall, a guy that was their, he's the third leading tackler on the team, and also he's got 6 touchdown receptions. So we'll see how that all plays out, too, and a tough, hard-nosed kid. But, I mean, it's probably 2 teams that you wouldn't have probably picked to be there, but it goes back to what TD said. I don't think anybody knew how this division was going to play out based on how the season goes. Here they are. Should be a great matchup.
A pretty cool thing, the last thing about this is we haven't really talked about Peter Haugo, and one of the best running backs in the state at 1,300 yards, 23 touchdowns, but a great family situation between him. You guys have probably all read that article, and just kind of get a smile when you read this article where his uncle is the AD for Moorhead. His cousin is one of the best players in the state, plays for Moorhead. They're going to be playing in a state semis down in Minneapolis area, and so you got this whole family affair watching each other, and it was just kind of cool reading that article and seeing how the dads were great athletes back in their day. They played at Concordia, both the dad and the uncle, and so it's a very good family tradition for them as well. And Peter Haugo, I can tell you, he is a load. He's 6'1", 200, and he can run inside and he can run outside. So the matchup between Haugo and Walters or Muse, you'll see that a lot tomorrow.
It's going to be fun. That's game number 3, and then the nightcap tomorrow night in the AA ranks. Speaking of teams that no one thought would be there, especially at the middle portion of the season, how about the 0-5 start for the Century Patriots? They climb their way in as the number 8 seed in the AA ranks. They take on Fargo Shanley. The Deacons and the Patriots will go toe-to-toe. Shanley at 9-2, 5-6 for Century. They finished 3-2 inside the West region. We get to see one of the top quarterbacks in the state of North Dakota tomorrow, and in a kid by the name of Michael Rosberg. 2,021 yards through the air, 24 touchdowns for him. He goes against Barth tomorrow, and this is a matchup that, talk about a Cinderella story here in Century that climbs back into the Dakota Bowl. In my mind, is it fair to say that Shanley's kind of a Cinderella as well, hopping up to that AA rank and really making some noise there? Is that maybe a little outlandish in a sense?
I don't think so. I think Shanley is, a team that, when Troy Mattern took over, he made the decision, we're going to go play at that high level right away. And
he had the horses too. He
had the guys that were there, but certainly I think the big thing for Shanley is, what they did, and they went to that no huddle offense, and we saw it for the first time. We've covered Shanley a couple times this year. We saw it for the first time against Mandan last week, and certainly they go at it, and they've got the guys that can go at it. And then on the flip side of it, you got Century, who's gone on the road and really defeated 2 teams that handled them during the regular season and limited in points. So How good is this Century defense? Well, they seem to be pretty good, but I think tomorrow will be a true test. Now, keep in mind, these two teams played earlier, and Shanley wins at 14-7. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Century's a Cinderella at all. They were ranked number 1 in the West and number 2 in the overall poll in the first poll that came out, and it was, if anything, a disappointment, not a Cinderella. And they finally kind of built themselves back up. Where I think the seniors, I know they had Brynjolfsson and the quarterback Kyan Barth had a conversation with Coach Wingebach and said, okay, what's going on? How do we right this ship? And I think it's beautiful when you have leadership like that step up in those situations, and then they respond. And so it's a great story. And I think they're where they thought they should have been at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. Okay, and now that it's just taken some time to get to this point. But my concern with Century is they can't score any points. They only score 17 points a game, and then and part of it is there because they've had some big scores against some other teams. The Wilstons, they scored 34, and Bismarck High, they scored 23. And so outside of Cheyenne, when they scored 27, that's a lot short fields that score when they beat Cheyenne 27-8. I think that there's a little bit of mystery to that because they still didn't have a lot of offensive yards. And so to me, I don't know how Century is going to be able to score enough points to beat Shanley. If it gets in the 20s, Century's going to be in trouble in my book.
Yeah, the thing about Century, everybody knew they had talent, right? But it took some time for that to kind of figure itself out. You had a kid that hadn't had very many snaps at quarterback, and Century was making a bunch of mistakes early on. It could have been penalties. It could have been alignment. It could have been just a kid missing a play. It was a lot of turnovers. And now what you've seen the last 6 weeks is that's flipped. And now all of a sudden Century's getting those breaks that were completely going against them at the beginning of the season. Now they're playing clean football, relying on their defense. I think back to what Troy Mattern said to us after the game. He didn't even know who had won between Century and Davies, and he said Century won. He says, I can tell you right now, that's the best defense we played the whole year. And so Shanley certainly recognizes that Century can do some nice things trying to slow down Shanley. I look at Shanley, I'm like, how fun would that be to play in that offense? I mean, come on. If you're a QB and you get to chuck it around the field 50 times a night, I mean, come on.
Well,
sign me up.
Yeah, and you talk about that, and in order to do that, you got to have the weapons to do it. Yep. And certainly they do not lack the weapons. With Connor Kraft and Carl Quist, not Carl Quist, but Oshak and guys like that. We haven't even talked about Akim.
Leininger.
Yeah, so certainly they've got it. And going back to what Chuck said is that Century has a trouble scoring. And talking to people this week, it's can Century score? Well, I think Century's in a situation where kind of like Manning, but Manning not able to hang on. Century, they got to go down and score right away. I think if they can score right away and set the tone and then let their defense settle in. But like you said, Chuck, I mean, Century's going to have to make some big plays, I think, offensively tomorrow to stay with this high-powered Shanley defense.
The one thing that Century has on their defense, obviously, they're very good up front. You got Edlund, you got Burkhardt, and you got a stout front end of their defense. They're playing, as you said earlier, their secondary is playing really good right now, and they got some good athletes back there. And you're going to see Peyton Art playing in the secondary. You're going to see Gavin Lill. You're going to see Ryan Brynjolfsson and others. It kind of reminds me of, remember the Titans. Sunshine, you're going in and playing defense. Just guard him man-to-man. And the Century's got guys that can hang with those big and athletic Shanley receivers.
Yeah, I've been impressed with the guys in the back. We've heard a lot of Lill. We've heard a lot of Brynjolfsson, but Braden Brose and Blake Ersland, those are the guys at the strong safety and free safety. They have just played a solid season. But you don't hear their names. And you're going to hear their names tomorrow because they're going to have to match up against these just a host of great athletes and receivers. And so, hey, it's the typical offense versus the defense. Who's going to win? I mean, that's how it's set up right there. And I got a feeling the team that wins it's going to be some turnovers. There's going to be some turnovers. There's going to be some short fields, and that's what's going to make a difference.
And styles make fights, right?
Yeah.
Who can impose their will? Because Century is going to want to grind it. They're going to want to run the football with their QB. They're going to want to hand it off. They're going to want to be efficient in the passing game. And Shanley's just going to play 150 miles an hour. And who can have their style for the most of the game? That'll be a big thing in who wins the game.
And I think too, Century's obviously done that. I mean, in the playoffs, they've made some some changes defensively, and they've gone down to Cheyenne, and they said, all right, here we're going to make these adjustments, and here's how we're going to do it. Well, it worked there, and they did the same Davies team that beat them a couple weeks ago. I mean, it was a track meet, Davies on that one, and they came down, and there they did it again. And so you just question, and is there 4 more quarters left in this defense against a high-octane offense?
68 points difference in the semis and the quarterfinals. They gave up 8 points to Cheyenne. They gave up 0 to Davies. During the season, they gave up 41 to Cheyenne and 36 to Davies. So that just shows how their defenses turns things around. And so I have got nothing but praises for Century's defense, and they've kind of hung their hat on that defense for many, many years. And so ultimately, to me, the offense is going to have to step up. We'll see what happens.
You know, the one thing offensively that they have started to do, though, they started to hit some bigger plays.
Yeah.
You think of them as 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of thing on offense, but, man, most recently they've been starting to throw some things over the top as well and getting some big plays to Brynjolfsson and Lil and William Wares, get some catches, and they're starting to stretch defenses out a little bit, and that's dangerous.
Hey, have you started your all-name team list yet?
For the
Dakota Bowl?
Yep. Number 1 is Hank Bodine. Anybody named Hank gets my vote right away.
Well, you got to have Ole Taylor.
Oh
on
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Ole Taylor has to be on there. Hank and Ole. That's a good way to start the Dakota Bowl list on a Thursday night, huh?
I mean, the last thing I want to say about this, and Todd, you will appreciate this, because confidence is such a big thing, especially at the quarterback spot. And Kyan Barth right now, he is playing with confidence.
Yeah.
And that is, he wasn't early on, TD. You kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but we've seen some tape on him the last couple of games, and he's kind of a different kid right now. He's playing with a little bit of swagger, and I think he feels that he has been one of the reasons in terms of the leaders that have turned things around. And so from that perspective, obviously from an offensive side, they're going to need that tomorrow.
Yeah, he's going to need to play good tomorrow for Century to win, and he's been playing really good the last half of the season.
Yep.
So kudos to him. And one of the things I think that really got him going was he's a physical kid. I mean, he's 6 foot, 6'1", couple 100 pounds.
Yeah,
and when they started running him,
yep.
that I think that just kind of opened the things up for him, and it just made the whole offense look a whole lot better. And then they stopped turning it over too. Hey, and you talk about hot. Century's hot. I guarantee you nobody in AA wants to play Century right now.
Cheyenne did not want to play him in the opening round, that's for sure.
Yeah, and
somebody asked me that week, they said, who do you think's going to win the Cheyenne Century game? I said, well, the way I'm going to answer that is Cheyenne's going to win. I think Cheyenne's going to win, but I wouldn't want to play Century.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's it, and that's kind of the way it's developed. I mean, Davies, if I'm Davies, I don't want to play Century. I just played him a couple weeks ago. I don't want to play him again. Well, look what happened. And here we are, same situation, 14-7. Shanley wins early. Now we got part 2.
Part 2 is going to be what could be a classic tomorrow from the Fargo Dome. That's the nightcap tomorrow night at the Dakota Bowl. Well, gentlemen, we'll take a break and hear from Sport Clips, and then we'll come back, and we're either going to lose a bunch of friends or make a bunch of friends here. We're gonna make our picks on who we think is going to win tomorrow at the Dakota Bowl 2022. I don't know. We might need to get some security in here as well, because I don't know if everybody is going tornadoes or not when we come back.
I got 911 on speed dial, all right?
I appreciate that, Woody. We thank you so much. Again, Sport Clips in Monmouth and Bismarck, home of the MVP haircut experience. They bring you the preview show. We'll make our picks when we come back here to the Expressway Suites in Fargo.
Our stylists are trained to understand the nuances of cutting men's hair. Less pomp, more adore, huh, Brittany?
Square face wavy hair.
Mid-fade with a textured top. Finish it off with the hard part and taper that neckline, coach.
Cowlick, what's the move? It's not just all about hard work here.
Hit all. 7. Pressure. Points. Yeah.
It takes expertise to be a Sport Clip stylist.
Here.
That's the spot. Right there, huh?
Sport Clips, the pros in men's hair.
Return the football from his own 15-yard line on the opening kickoff of the contest, and the Aggies are in the house for 6. Bob to the races, all the way up the far sideline, trying to break free. It's Eigelhart all the way to the house for a touchdown.
Our stylists are trained to understand the nuances of cutting men's hair. Less pomp, more adore, huh, Brittany?
Square face wavy hair.
Mid-fade with a textured top. Finish it off with the hard part and taper that neckline, coach.
Cowlick, what's the move? It's not just all about hard work here.
Hit all. 7. Pressure. Points. Yeah.
It takes expertise to be a sport clip stylist.
Here.
That's a spot. Right there, huh?
Sport Clips, the pros in men's hair.
Dakota Bowl preview show for 2022 brought to you by Sport Clips, where you can get the MVP haircut experience at Sport Clips. Nothing like it. I was there today, and I'll tell you what, I feel like a whole new man.
Got the wig snap. Looks good.
Yeah, she even shaved my beard. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Hey, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
You get the MVP?
You've got to get the MVP at Sport Clips.
If anybody goes to Sport Clips and he doesn't get the MVP, then you might as well never go there again.
Yeah. Well, my beard was getting so gray, I had to do something about it.
What's wrong with the gray beards?
It looks great. It looks fantastic. Well, gentlemen, what do you say? It's time to make our picks for tomorrow, and what should be another fantastic day of high school football on the PSP Network. You can listen to every one of the games tomorrow, live digital radio starting tomorrow morning. Chuck and I will have the call of the first one. Shields pregame show tomorrow for that opening matchup tomorrow between Central Cass and Velva, starting tomorrow morning roughly around 8:40. Well, there's a ton of Cavalier fans that are joining us here inside of the Expressway Inn and Suites here in Fargo, North Dakota. So, honey, if I don't come home, you might want to start in Cavalier and see if you can stir up any leads right in there. Here we go. All right, let's make these picks right about now. And starting with you, Chuck, in the nine-man game, you get to go first here in the nine-man world tomorrow. Which direction do you go in this showdown between New Salem Almont and Cavalier?
Well, let's start out by saying I was born in Cavalier. My parents, my dad was from Walhalla. I have some land right off the Pembina Gorge. Their 4th time they're going to get to the state championship, but I got to go with the Holsteins. I think it's going to be a close. I think it's going to be a 2-point game. I think it's going to be comes down to who makes an extra point. I feel like they're going to be one more extra point that the Holsteins are going to make.
I really like how you teed that one up.
Yes.
I'm not sure what in the hell TD and I are going to do. We haven't made our picks yet. But
you were like Lee Korsmo. You should have had a Holstein head. You went with
TD, where do you fall into line? And by the way, after Chuck teed it up the way he did, keep in mind this guy's from Langdon originally. He's a Cardinal, so that doesn't make things any better. So, TD, which direction are you going tomorrow with this 9-man matchup?
So, Cavalier in my mind is favored in this game. Okay, and so I think the Tornadoes have a chance to win the football game, most definitely. But as you said, I still have nightmares of trying to tackle Scott Jobe and Mike Watson from Cavaliers' first state championship team in 1987. I still wake up in the night with sweats about that, so there's no way in heck I can pick the Tornadoes. I'm going with the Holsteins.
Oh, boy. Well, Woody, the floor is yours.
And I'm not so sure how in the hell I'm going to say this like those two guys did. I mean, I tell you, I think as they both said, this is going to be a hell of a football game, and I think these two teams are basically looking to get over the hump, and probably one more than the other, and it's probably Cavalier just since the number of times they've been there. And I agree with you, TD. They're probably favored. But I'm going to go with the team from the West. I'm going with the Holsteins as well.
Ouch. Oh, man, we got a disappointing crowd. Nick.
Hey, just just for
but
Just for the Cavalier folks, last year we were all on Cavalier, and that didn't work out so good. So I think karma's on your side this time around.
It might be a good luck charm to have us all go this direction. Look here.
By the way, I'm guessing there's going to be if Cavalier wins this thing, I'm guessing there's going to be a number of people that are going to turn around and look up towards the press box. Okay, you can bet on that.
And at that point, I'll be down on the field celebrating with them with Tyler Hagan from Tyler Hagan Photography, just so I don't get mugged. I'll just fall into the crowd there. Unfortunately, tomorrow, 22-0. On the season combined for both of these teams. It's a shame that somebody has to lose this football game on the biggest day of many of these kids' lives tomorrow. Yeah. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I flipped a coin on this one, and it said New Salem Almont, and the Holsteins are my pick for tomorrow as well. But it could go either direction in my mind. We have a special guest pick tonight, Tyler Hagan Photography, and Tyler Hagan is actually here. Thank you, Tyler, for doing what you do for the PSP Network. He's going to have a photo album of every game on the PSP Network. Make sure on the Facebook page to and follow that. He'll have he's one of the best in the business in the state of North Dakota. Tyler Hagan had his pick. Tyler, I don't remember what you chose, but you've got your back turned to these Cavalier people. What direction did you go with your pick?
You know it was Cavalier. Come on.
Oh, we dodged the bullet.
You're now the favorite member of PSP Network.
See, we didn't know who the other people picked, so it was all this. We're learning this for the first time.
That was. He just sold about 12 of those photo albums right here, right now. I can tell you that right now. Smart businessman right there.
The man. Nice picks, gentlemen. On to the 11B game tomorrow. Again, Central Cass taking on a Velva Aggies team. Region 3 against Region number 1. Velva undefeated at 12-0. 9-2 for Central Cass. Larry Sandy's Cowboy Rides Away tour, if you will. Let's start at the top here with Chuck. Who do you pick tomorrow in the 11B?
Start with me again?
That's the way it has to go.
Well, look at the graph. Just only because of the graphic.
Crying in the beer. Jeez. Hey, this is a tough one to me. Be honest with you, I feel like the tradition of Velva is just too big to beat, and the strength. I look at their numbers. They got a big front line. They got Kyle Sandy. Hey, he wants to win one for his dad. He's a senior, and I think Central Cass is going to have to pull something out to win, and I feel like Velva Drake's kind of that meat and potatoes kind of team that they're just kind of they're going to get this victory. So I got to go with the Aggies.
Aggies tomorrow, says Chuck. TD, do you fall in line with Chuck, or do you go a different direction?
I'm going with Velva Drake, Animus Garrison, and the logic there is I think Central Cass is going to play a good game, but man, how do you vote against and pick against Larry Sandy in a game like this? Yeah. I mean, that's the wild card for me. And the fact that Velva has been there and done that, and they've been through this 9 o'clock game. And I guarantee you Coach Sandy didn't have to call up and get advice from other coaches on how to handle this thing because he's had that program. He's figured it out. He's had success on this stage. And so I think that's going to pay dividends for the Aggies tomorrow. And Velva just flat out doesn't beat themselves. And I think that's just going to be too much for Central Cass to overcome.
It should be an interesting game. Nevertheless, TD has Velva on the board in this showdown. What direction do you go? Is Central Cass, in your mind, able to get a victory, which would be an upset according to the first two on the poll here tonight?
Yeah, well, I think hats off to what Central Cass has done to go on the road and win the games that they have. But I think I got to echo these guys' thoughts too. Is there's just too many things that weigh towards the Velva Drake Animus Garrison sideline, and that would be their head coach Larry Sandy. This is going to be the last game that he coaches. He's been there, done that. He knows how to prep these kids for this type of a game and this type of an atmosphere. And I think, like I said, I think Central Cass is, they're going to give them all they can handle. But I just think some of those kids for Velva Drake Animus Garrison step up, make some big plays. I'm going with Velva Drake Animus Garrison.
Good pick. I would have to say the same thing and mirror that. You look at it, And what Velva Drake Animus Garrison has been able to do in their time and appearances in the Dakota Bowl and state championships in the Dakota Bowl, you look at their appearances, and when Velva appeared in Dakota Bowl action, 1997 under Larry Sandy. They were there again in the early 2000s, right out of the gate in the early 2000s. They're a program. I was trying to find it here. I had the dates actually picked off, but 2000. Anyone have that right in front of them?
2000, 2001, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. I mean, they rolled.
And that's my point is that
they get there, they win.
And a majority of those kids were, growing up in that community, probably pretty little at that time, obviously, but the tradition is there, and the culture is there. And I have to pick Velva in this one, like you said, with Larry Sandy riding out. THP, you've got the last pick here. Velva or Central Cass? Velva for Tyler Hagan. A clean sweep for the Velva Aggies, according to the staff from PSP Network. It will be a fun ball game, nevertheless. All right, on to the 11 single A matchup tomorrow. Fargo North against Jamestown. Chuck, the floor is yours on this one. Is this an easy choice for you or a tough choice for you tomorrow?
I mean, it's an easy choice in that I feel like Jamestown is a better football team, and I feel like the matchup is you got your athlete, your best player in Haugo with Fargo North, and you got a stout defense led by 2 All-Staters in Muse and in Walters. And to me, you got those linebackers are going to be keen on them, and I feel like the defense is just too good for Jamestown that they're going to shut down Fargo North. And I think it's 2 in a row for the Blue Jays.
2 in a row for the Blue Jays. TD, are you on that wagon as well?
I think the fact that these two teams played at the end of October, and it was a convincing victory for Jamestown, 49-21 in that matchup, and just what I've seen out of Peyton Hochhalter, how well he's playing, I say advantage to the team that has a W under their belt earlier and again in this matchup, and I look at the quarterback play in many cases, and that's the tipping factor for me. I'm going with the Blue Jays.
Blue Jays, first 2 picks. Scott Woodmansee, the floor is yours.
Well, I don't know what more to say. I mean, these guys pretty much covered it, and I think Hochhalter, I think he just, we saw him rise up last year in what he did in that game, and I think he's been at the big stage, and the stage is big again tomorrow, and all I can say is get the back-to-back T-shirts ready to go, because I'm going with the Jamestown Blue Jays as well.
Yeah, going third in this order, not an easy thing to do. It's you guys have already covered it. I've got Jamestown as well. I think the Blue Jays, they've got athletes. They've got some kids that have been there, and they're going to look to do it again tomorrow. THP, the floor is yours. Jamestown on the clean sweep.
Wow.
Well, that's 2 matchups that everybody agrees upon. On to the AA showdown. Century against Shanley, a matchup inside of the AA ranks. Chuck, you'll go first here. Century's 5-6, Shanley 9-2 on the season. What direction do you go with the Patriots and Deacons tomorrow?
Well, according to you guys, is the glass slipper still on for Cinderella Century? I just don't know if it is or not. I feel like Fargo Shanley's too much. I feel like the hot quarterback, TD. I love the conversation you talk about that. Rosberg is just he's a stud. He's a guy that he's got so many weapons out there, and I just watch Coach Mattern. We've talked to him how many times this year. He is so confident as a coach. He exudes confidence to his kids. He was down 21-6 to Mandan at halftime, and he wasn't even worried. And his kids weren't worried. Yeah. And so when you got a mentality like that as a coach, and you're pushing it onto your kids, and I feel like that offense, when the true test of offense versus defense, I feel in this case the Shanley offense really is going to be able to prevail. So I'm going to go with the Deacons.
Shanley Deacons for Chuck Clairmont. TD, you've got 2 sons from Century. You're a quarterback yourself back in the day. You know how good Rosberg is. You're a Century guy. I mean, this is a teeter-totter in your brain, I'd have to assume.
I mean, this one's tricky. So you got Coach Mattern for Shanley. I echo the same thing that Chuck said. They got down 14-0 last week, and he looks at me on the sideline and says, "How about that start, TD?" And I'm kind of like, well, deja vu to the last time you played Mandan. And he's like, yeah, just where we want him. But to your point, he exuded confidence. Yep. It didn't even bother that football team one bit. But I tell you what, guys, this is too good of a story for me to get off of this one. The fact that the Patriots have rallied, they're the dark horse. They're the underdog. They're the Cinderella story. They were 0-5, and now to have a chance to win a state championship and be 6-6 on the season and be the number 8 seed, I got the Patriots, baby. I'm going with the Patriots.
Woody, this is your alma mater right here.
Well, there's a couple things that factor in that. It's my alma mater, not to mention my wife teaches there. Okay. But I again, I totally, with what Chuck has said, I mean, Shanley is just so high-powered in what they do and that no huddle but I think Century really has made some adjustments defensively and I got to ride the slipper too, man. I'm going to go with the Bismarck Century Patriots.
Yes.
Thanks, Andy. That was for you, Andy.
Smart gentleman. You are.
Not bad, huh?
All over it. You know what? Century with their worst start since before I was even born. Props to Ron Wingenbach for what he's been able to do and get that team back to where they are tomorrow and right now here today. Props to them. And, of course, I always like to see the West Region team succeed, but I've had the chance to call Shanley games or be a part of the Shanley matchups for about 3 weeks in a row here now. And watching what Rossberg's been able to do with those big targets that they have and coverage in the secondary, I don't see Shanley running out of gas tomorrow. I've got the Deacons taking down Century, and I think it might be big, too, to tell you the truth. That's a little going on a limb and really drive the nail home tomorrow.
I'm glad you mentioned that about Coach Wingenbach because I guarantee you when the Century Patriots are 0-5 and they don't think they should be 0-5, that ship is starting to splinter. And for him to keep that baby pointed in the right direction and not let all those outside influences, wreck a season, which it could have. It could have easily.
No question about it.
It could have easily went completely the wrong direction. Tip of the cap to Coach Wing to get that thing righted and now have a chance to win another state title.
And the senior leaders on that team.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
THP, you get the tiebreaker in this one. 2-2. Who do you have tomorrow, the Deacons or the Patriots? Shanley Deacons for Tyler Hagan. Well, there you see the PSP Power Picks. All for fun here on the PSP Network. It's going to be a great day of Dakota Bowl coverage tomorrow. Gentlemen, I can't thank you all enough for what you do for PSP Network and a great job calling football all year. A ton of fun to go back and watch those games and listen back. And just more than proud to be able to call you guys partners in crime here with the PSP Network. And great job so far. Looking forward to your guys' call tomorrow. Chuck, looking forward to working with you tomorrow as well. Closing thoughts here tonight before we get to Dakota Bowl, the eve of Dakota Bowl night for us.
Yeah, I mean, when you go back and it's how many of these Dakota Bowls that we've done and everything just runs together. But this is probably one that I'm really excited for over maybe the last few years, just based on the matchups and the games and some of the storylines and things like that. But I think it's gonna be a great day. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun and be surprised if we might see a blowout, but I'd be surprised if we see more than one blowout tomorrow.
Yeah, it should be fun. Chuck, I have to ask you this. North Dakota Safety Council, your bread and butter and where you work and reside, operate every single day at the top of that. What's the message tomorrow with travel getting here?
Well, obviously be safe. Hopefully the plows are going to be out. Hopefully the weather turns after midnight tonight. But, hey, make sure in your vehicles you got stock what you need to stock, whether it's your truck, whether it's some sand if you got it, whether it's whatever. I mean, be prepared with your emergency kit and then drive slow. Take your time. You're right. You're going to get here. Take your time. That's what you have to do. Just it's obviously about being safe. It's about getting home to your family every night. That's what we surely preach. And whether it's driving down to Fargo and getting back to your family or whatever the case may be, there's nothing worth trying to be late for. And so I thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about that, because safety surely is a huge part tomorrow. And everybody, please be safe out there. Drive safe, and hopefully everybody gets out down here without any incidents.
I hope so too. On the football note, turn the page there. And closing thoughts on the preview show here tonight. I
think the closing thoughts to me is that we've created a lot of relationships now with all the games we've been doing, and because of what you've done with the PSP Network, we've got a chance to touch a lot of different lives, and that's the beauty to me is we're not just calling the game now from kind of a roost. We get a chance to talk and touch the lives and interview people afterwards. A lot of people aren't doing, and get to know these kids. And I think that's the beauty of it to me is it's kind of one of those years that we know a lot of these kids. We know we've talked to them. We know the coaches. We know some of the players, the fans, or whatever else. And that's what makes this even more exciting for me to do it, is because we have more of a vested interest just because we know them all. We're not just, we're not just up in a pedestal watching these people.
Fantastic stuff. TD, closing thoughts from you?
Well, I'm already getting text messages about my century pick, so somebody's watching. I guess I don't know if they think it's a kiss of death or like, what are you doing? But I guess for me, guys, I think back to, we like to promote local athletes, and who's going to be that kid that puts a cape on tomorrow and does some Superman stuff. I think back to Ryan Crest for Cavalier. When he ran for 350-some yards and set a Dakota Bowl record when they won a state title. Who's going to be that kid tomorrow on that field that's going to have a day like that? Yep. And that's what gets me fired up about covering events like this.
Fantastic stuff there as well. My closing thoughts are that tomorrow Dakota Bowl action starts bright and early. I think the boss will probably even let you listen at work. I don't think you put your earbuds in. He doesn't need to know, or she doesn't need to know. These gentlemen right here that call high school football in North Dakota, some of the best of the business. Western North Dakota, I don't even know if that's up for debate anymore. You guys do a fantastic job across the board. You'll have coverage wall to wall tomorrow. I'll be there as well, and I'm looking forward to just a great day for so many kids, communities, and athletes, fans, parents, people involved in the families. It's bittersweet. Somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose. We'll see it 4 times tomorrow. Can't thank all you guys enough for doing what you do for PSP Network. And it's showtime tomorrow morning at 8:40. Gentlemen,
let's do it.
Get a good night's of rest tonight, and we'll be ready for the Dakota Bowl tomorrow.
All right,
man.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Nick.
Big thanks again to Sports Clips bringing you the preview show 2022. Big thanks to all the Cavalier fans that sat and joined us here tonight as well. Best of luck tomorrow to the Tornadoes and all the teams that play. Until tomorrow morning at 8:40, when Chuck and I will hit the air for our pregame show brought to you by Shields. For Mr. Scott WOODMANSEE, Chuck Clairmont, and Todd DOMRES, Nick HULBERG signing off. Please have a good night, and God bless.
Our stylists are trained to understand the nuances of cutting men's hair. Less pomp, more adore, huh, Brittany?
Square face wavy hair.
Mid-fade with a textured top. Finish it off with a hard part and taper that neckline, coach.
Cowlick, what's the move? It's not just all about hard work here.
Hit all. 7. Pressure. Point. Yeah.
It takes expertise to be a Sport Clip stylist.
Here.
That's a spot. Right there, huh?
Sport Clips, the pros in men's hair.